Thanks to Trevor for a really wonderful, witty, insightful excursion through this, the odd turns and neologisms that spring up to describe this, what Trevor admits is a distinctive but somewhat weird city in many respects. The economy is increasingly a weightless entity, unless you include the property market, which isn't all after all weightless. I know lunch is looming, but we need to have some good discussion about the comments. So I'd like to solicit questions and comments from the floor. If we can all come up here. I know we're in the way of lunch. I understand. I do get that. But surely some of this wonderful.
Just as we're sitting down, I'll make one point that I skipped over. We're such a strange city. In Vancouver, the developers are the intellectuals. We're unique in the world. Our intellectual class are developers. And we have people like Michael Ledane, a freedom writer, an art collector, etc. Bob Rainey, a world-class collector, expert on art. Ian Gillespie picked the word Gesamtkunstwerk, not me. He encountered it in reference to Wagner, to 19th century total design, etc., etc. So we're in a very strange place where our developers are the intellectual class, and I've argued that academics are their entrepreneurs. You've got to hustle for your salaries, your things, etc. So we've inverted kind of class action in the city.
You found this out.
Exactly.
There's enough food for everybody, so please don't think you have to rush back. Great.
I've done a bit of research that indicates that the use of CD1 zoning to allow for buildings above a height of 30 meters has increased in the last previous two council terms. I was wondering if you could comment on the use of the sort of comprehensive zoning in the building of Vancouver.
You know, it's interesting. I had seen a research report produced by our zoning group that, looking at a longer time frame, that actually had indicated that we weren't that much higher in terms of the proportion of CD1s. So in any case, I would like to see what you're referring to. So if you could email that to me, that'd be great. The CD1, the first CD1 was Oak Ridge, I think, and it's now become a unique phenomena and on settling for neighborhoods. And as the supervisor of the West End team, we actually decided that we for most of the West End, we were going to say no more CD1s. And the reason why is that, you know, you would get such an increase in density, something that people weren't anticipating. So we thought on the West End, for most of the residential areas, let's do infill within zoning, within a prescribed height envelope. Secondly, let's identify the areas generally north of Robson, east of Denman, and west of Thurlow as areas where we would anticipate CD1s, but only on the basis, and I'm excluding our villages, our shopping villages, only on the basis that you were offering us social housing for the areas that are east of Thurlow, because, you know, and also for the area north of Robson, we were looking primarily for community amenity contributions. We have done a public benefit strategy. It's amazing. Somewhere between $600 and $700 million over the next 30 years. Most of that is being generated out of community amenity contributions. It was interesting, Bob Williams was saying we're not leveraging the land value increases. Actually, we are very much doing that. Also, CD1s are an opportunity where you can negotiate with a developer and discuss a community amenity contribution, which is much more significant than what you'll get in a development cost levy. Development cost levy could be, you know, $15 a square foot. You're going to get much more for a CAC. But I think the best thing for a community plan is as much certainty as possible. We were basically told when we went into the West End was going to grow, but we noticed that we suggested, and ultimately that's the way we see it unfolding, it'll grow at the pace it's been growing since 1981. So we didn't want to see dramatic growth. We didn't want to lose the rental stock.
I think that partly what you're looking at with the CD1 is the ability to be creative on a site-by-site basis. Having said that, as we move from the downtown with the very large properties where you could do in-kind on-site contributions into the neighborhoods where we tended to be working on much smaller parcels of land, Larry and I started to sort of clash. We never clashed publicly, but on getting into the neighborhoods and seeing there that if we tried to go CD1 and negotiate, you know, on every small lot, this would be not only a time-consuming, but also a lack of security from the developer's point of view as to how much they should be putting into their pro formas to account for development cost levies. So, I mean, Rhonda's here, and I think she did some exceptionally good work in looking at outside the downtown how to do DCLs and CACs with some sense of certainty, but also the creativity for the community to be involved and have a say in what kinds of benefits came out, in most cases of money, rather than in kind on the smaller sites.
Okay, Michael?
Well, building on Ed's point about Vancouver being nimble, it seems to me the one addition to Trevor's list is housing affordability. We're going to have to be nimble for the next 2 or 3 decades. But that's the overwhelming challenge we have. So the 3 of you have been really active in the city for quite a while. How do you see Vancouver becoming nimble to reach that goal?
Great
Well,
question.
well, I'll start with that briefly by telling you, last night I probed Larry in the interviews you'll see online about what was not done when he was co-director. And I think he was very straightforward that more should have been done for housing affordability. And I think in some ways the agenda of public benefits as defined by the development industry, daycares, parks, galleries, etc. The development industry here is extremely intelligent and knew the American tendency towards including affordable housing within projects. If you go to Lower Manhattan, the affordable units are in the same tower, and you hardly even know in the elevator who's who. So that was a terror to UDI, and they did not want affordable housing declared as directly, in that American sense, as a benefit that would be recognized. So I think we have always underestimated how well researched and well prepared the industry is, and I think we could have or might have done, and we should have looked at things at the flats and other zones as potentially affordable housing zones that we didn't. But I'll let you, in a few days when it's online, see what Larry had to say about that missed opportunity.
Though Larry and I, again, were often back and forth on the flats. He saw it as downtown 3. I said, how are you going to service your downtown if you have no adjacent places that, cars can be stored at night, you can have purchasing of food for the next day, so that between the port backup and the flats, there is a function that's serving the downtown rather than sending out to Richmond. I think on the affordable housing, Mike, it was very successful in the years you chaired the Housing Committee. Remember, at that time, the federal government was providing 2,000 units a year of nonprofit and co-op housing. And while the city made land available, often at considerably less than market cost, even giving land away, we couldn't make the affordability work for many of the single parents and younger people. And so the only way it worked was having that additional infusion. And how you do that on a city budget where you have to balance your budget every year, you know how difficult it is. So it's really a question to me still of asking whether the federal and provincial governments should have the kind of proportion of our income that they get, leaving the cities with basically user fees and property taxes as our only source of income.
We'll give John Freeman the last question comment before.
I'm just going to say something very quickly about nimbleness, and a big concern I'd suggest would be the stratification of property. And stratification of property is, of course, what the development industry needs to do in order to sell condos. Half the downtown is are stratified buildings, half the downtown is not stratified. If you're looking at areas of the city that can be nimble and evolve, half the downtown will be it'll be much easier for that part of the downtown to evolve, that part of the downtown that's not stratified property. We've built these buildings, they're very, very complicated. It's very difficult to unravel what we have because it involves private property.
John?
This has been an historical panel, mostly, stopping around 2000, 2010. Then we have the Gesamtkunstwerk foreshadowing the future. But I want to know, do you see this period that we are living through as another beginning of another era? Is there something special about 2014, or are we really living on past capital ideas of capital development, so on?
Well, I think one interesting change is that there's a divergence in families. What we're seeing, and it's well documented, is one portion of the 20 to 35 generation is anticipating they want to live in urban places, they want to walk, they don't want to own a car, they don't mind having, being on with a stroller in a busy sidewalk. We have another half of the generation that really, that want to move out to the suburbs, want to have their life revolve around their cars and driving and malls and driving their children places. So in terms of the future, I think the tension between those two, we're certainly seeing the Harper government is definitely, the GTA area, they're seeing that their key battleground is committing those folks who have chosen to live that type of life to commit to keep the Conservative Party in power. And frankly, as long as we have the Conservative Party, a lot of the issues we talk about today are simply not going to get the focus of the federal government.
Thanks, Michael. All right.
Oh, well, can't resist that. I went to University of Calgary with Stephen Harper.
Oh my goodness.
He'd read Fountainhead. No, I'm not making this up. And I was a graduate student in architecture, and he was thinking he wanted to be an architect until he found out he had to have a portfolio and draw and a few other things. So the Stephen Harper I argued with at length was a would-be city planner. And there's an alternative history, and he would show up at all of the talks like these in Symposia in the architecture planning school. And I was the glib-mouth, soft lefty, the student who would always make a point and be a pain in the ass, frankly. But Stephen was much smarter than me, and he would wait until he could advance a libertarian argument. And he was a very, very clever fellow and very meticulous in that, and we argued. The link from that Stephen Harper story to today is, I think, his government and his devices have been always underestimated. He's been read as a social conservative, but he really is a libertarian. And I do think things that are referred to today about the withering away of Stats Canada, of the census, of the withering away of environmental research, and the withering away of democratic rights are all part of a very clever libertarian agenda where you deny the flow of information. You don't have to throw old ladies out of their housing. You starve the environmental and urban and other realms of the information by which we exist to make cases for policy. So I think that has happened in a very insidious way. And just to link to the topic at hand, the same thing happens with development statistics in Vancouver. It is astonishing that we do not have accurate data about offshore ownership, occupation, etc. We don't have it not because some accident or some failure. We don't have it because a very smart industry does not want to give it, and no political class in the city has ever been willing to invest time and energy to get the kind of data that they did. Other cities that have it Melbourne, Sydney, and Hong Kong itself have all developed policies to restrict non-resident ownership. There's more controls on non-resident ownership in China itself than there is in Vancouver. So I think this whole libertarian starving of information to advance a cause has been a hugely under-acknowledged strata under city building.
And I would just say, John, in answer to your question, the time we worked at City Hall was a time when City Council encouraged invention, new ideas. And if you fell off the edge of the cliff, you just climbed back up and carried on, and council said, well, we'll try something else. I don't get the impression today that there's the same willingness for council and staff to explore with bringing in people from elsewhere and engaging the public in that exploration.
Well said.
Then it's
Thanks,
up to the university, isn't it?
That's why we're here.
The rest of us.